So how would the government or the people, the communists, confiscate weapons? Well, one, they slowly put into place tiny little changes to all the laws to where they don't enforce them, but when they do, it'll create havoc among all the people that were saying, well, they'd say, well, that doesn't really mean that. That doesn't really mean that. You know how they do. But they'll get you to, they'll get everybody that you'll have to be, maybe they won't register weapons, but maybe they'll register you as a weapons owner. Say like, I don't know, like, what do they call those, concealed carries? If you get one of those, say if they're going to have a change of government, and maybe they're planning on having a change of government because the government is saying, hey, we're only getting 30% of the money, we should get 70%. You know how greedy government is. And you could say, well, I'm voting for this guy because he's not, I mean, look what Trump did. He freaking stabbed the Constitution in the back with saying he don't care if there's they pull the guns before they go to court. So you can't trust anybody. And especially people that are, battle hardened, not battle hardened, but battle hardened against anti-confiscation. You don't know that those people aren't getting people under their confidence, so one day that they slowly start to switch, and they slowly start to switch and they turn their whole audience, or everybody that follows them, they start turning it to where, oh, okay, that we'll let that happen, and you'll say, well, it's still constitutional, and they slowly turn it. So people that get those concealed carry permits or whatever, and they'll give you a card. It's or those and people with weapons that don't get a carry conceal, and or anything that has to do with weapons. You have an ID. Instead of registering your weapons, they'll just register you. Of course, if you buy a weapon, you're more than likely registered anyway. But you'll have to have a card, and you'll have to take an oath to obey all laws, new, old, and new. So that means if there's a socialist government elected and they want to confiscate all the weapons, that card goes along with you having to obey. And if you don't, they'll say, well, you don't want to obey our laws. This is what we voted in. This is what the people voted in, whether it's 51% and the other 49 are saying, hey, that's all they're doing. They're breeding communism into this country, and they're spreading it. And one day they'll just say all these laws are now okay. So you didn't obey one of the you wasn't compliant enough with something, and so they somehow someplace they're going to start nitpicking laws. And then they're going to say, oh, you got too many strikes against your weapons permit, and under this law, the so-and-so says that you can't have weapons anymore. So they'll come in, they'll say, okay, we know where you live, and they'll come to your door and confiscate your weapons, and you'll say, well, I'm not going to allow that. Well, you say, well, you signed this contract with the government when you signed up for the whatever you get to get your weapons permit to buy or whatever they upgrade to, and you'll be stuck, and you wasn't compliant with this law and this law. Well, what are we supposed to do? Well, no, you're supposed to comply with these laws. It's like and since Trump gave them the confiscate order before you go to trial, they take your weapons, or they have a fire. I don't think this will happen. They'll have a big, they'll hit all the conventions like gun. How they have gun conventions. Where they come into town, they advertise. Well, they have a fire drill, and then they just lock all the doors once everybody's out, and confiscate all the weaponry in there. And of course, I don't think that'll ever. See, that would just be pure out freaking thievery right there. Of course, it all is anyway. But I mean, because they're just taking words and trying to turn them to where, you know, so the communists can say, hey, we want 70% of your freaking money. And that's all it is. It's all about greed. They don't care about freedom. I mean, why else would they? Why else would laws just continue? Why would they have laws and then just continue to upgrade them? I mean, if they got people in the Congress voting new laws in and just tighter and tighter restrictions on stuff that they, you know, and they have laws that they don't even enforce. They haven't dropped those out. They don't work on anything. They don't clean up anything. They just leave a clutter and add more to it. So the only thing that's good for is tighter and tighter restrictions to where they just start enforcing everything. And the only people that it's going to affect are, whatever, maybe landowners, maybe like that guy up in where he's got killed or something like that for having cattle on a government farm or government land. Anyway, that's got to be how they're going to do it. They'll just start issuing stuff, and they have you sign in. Well, you have to comply with these laws. It's just like your driver's license. You have to comply with laws. When you sign that first, I don't know if it's your driver's permit or your driver's your first contract you sign when you get a driver's license is it's got to be. It's in there somewhere where you've given up rights, and it says in there you give up the right of search, I think, or something like that, and you give up the. Anyway, I can't remember what it is. Too many years ago, but it's when you first get your license. It's the first thing. Here in Iowa, it is or was, and I was almost like, I don't know if I want to get my license, but to work, you need a license because you have transportation. Anyway, just another nip in the butt to put a pinch on you. That's got to be how they're going to do it. There ain't no other way they could legally do it except to have everybody sign a thing, say new and old laws, which would be when socialists take over, that will be the new law, and then they'll just have all these laws that they passed through that nobody thought about, but it's like an addendum to this and that, or whatever MOAs. What was Trump talking about the other day? I think it was a MOA. Isn't that like a addendum to a contract? That's like when a MOA is when you add to a contract. Say if you have I'm building this and we got windows all the way across the front and one door, and then I think the MOA is, it might not be. MOA is like when you say you want another door, instead of changing the whole contract, you just put an addendum to the contract because you've already made. You don't even have to. Supposedly you don't even have to have it written, but they say to have it written. But the MOA is like, oh, we want another door. So the other door is, I think, is the MOA. I'm not sure if that's it or not. I think maybe it's another law or something, or another contract law or something. But anyway, so yeah, all the wording and all that's got to be how they're going to do it, is by having you sign stuff, say the new law, any new government, I don't know how they word it, new government, new law. Anyway, that's long enough talking about that.